James Gunn's 2021 film The Suicide Squad is miles above the previous film's attempt at the team. From the cinematography to the dialogue to the characters themselves, there's a feeling of comfort for me every time I watch this movie. The Suicide Squad is my favorite team in comic books. The Justice League and the X-Men are right behind them. I've read more Suicide Squad comics than any other characters, and I currently own more Suicide Squad comics more than any other characters. But there's something about a group of villains that keeps me reading. So when the first movie released in 2016, when I was only 11, I was excited, and I liked it. But that's about it. I just liked it. As I got older though, I realized just how bad this movie was. The cinematography is dark and gritty, the plot is just plain bad, and besides Deadshot, Harley Quinn, and El Diablo, all the characters are pretty uninteresting. The only real compliment I can give this movie was that it was the only movie in the DCEU that actually felt connected to the rest of the universe. Scenes like Ben Affleck's Batman stopping Joker and Harley Quinn, and Ezra Miller's Flash stopping Captain Boomerang's robbery, this film was the only DCEU movie that succeeded in making the DCEU feel connected. So when James Gunn's The Suicide Squad released, I was ecstatic but hesitant. I didn't want to get burned by DC for the 30th time with another mid-entry into the DCEU. I was scared of getting burned by another movie of my favorite team that would just turn out to be bad. I was so scared of getting burned that I actually waited over a month to even watch it. I didn't trust the scoopers, the reporters, the YouTubers telling me it was good, but I was in no way prepared for just how good this movie would be. There's an immediate improvement in this movie because it doesn't waste time. For those of us who knew who the Suicide Squad is, we were able to get a swift and fun sequence where we see the behind the scenes at the beginning of a mission. But for those of us who don't know anything about the Suicide Squad, Gunn gave a swift explanation as to who the team is, why the team works for Waller, and what kind of person Waller is. Of course, the entire team in the first 15 minutes of the film are a red herring. I don't actually mind this at all. I actually loved the first sequence in this movie. It allowed James Gunn to use the team in a better way than before. In the original Suicide Squad, we saw one member of the team die, and his character wasn't explored in the slightest. In this movie, 15 minutes in, 6 people are dead. And each of those 6 characters have personalities and actually seem like they're people outside of the scenes we see them in. I remember watching DC Fandom and watching the interviews with the actors who play those characters, and I look back and laugh at how hilarious that is. Now, when we look at the real roster of the team, I'm in love with it. In my friend group and online, I'm known as the guy who likes more obscure DC characters. I absolutely love characters like Batman and Superman, but I like to read stories of heroes who aren't as talked about. So seeing Polka Dot Man of all people in the Suicide Squad movie and actually having emotional weight to his character is so refreshing. With the exception of Superman Legacy, Gunn loves to take lesser known characters and show the true emotion that their stories convey. Just with the first Guardians film alone, Gunn established himself as a filmmaker who put the characters above anything else. I think the least heartfelt character in this movie is actually Bloodsport. That doesn't mean that I don't love the character, but it's obvious that the character was only changed by name and costume. Even Gunn has said that they originally cast Idris Elba as the replacement for Will Smith's Deadshot, but decided to change the character in case Will Smith would like to come back further down the line. Peacemaker was a character even I was unfamiliar with. In this movie alone, he felt really good. I think even without the banger that is the Peacemaker show, I'd still love this character. This character and his story arc in this movie alone perfectly exemplifies what the Suicide Squad is about. The fact that his mission is only to make sure that nothing about Project Starfish gets out to the public is amazing. Not only does it showcase that Waller and Peacemaker are willing to do whatever it takes for the mission, but that Peacemaker has a heart. He truly doesn't want to kill Ratcatcher 2. Even when he does eventually kill Rick Flag, we see in his eyes that he's scared and actually feels bad about doing it. He knew what he did wasn't the right thing to do, and this emotion is perfectly conveyed by John Cena's acting. This is crazy to me since I, like a lot of us, grew up watching him wrestle and in the Fred movies. Speaking of Ratcatcher 2 though, her story arc is the most emotional out of anyone else on the team. We see her backstory of being homeless and having an addict for a father, and the only warmth that she could get emotionally and physically was from the rats after her father passed away. She was a hurt child, and even with this past, she was the most emotionally available on the team. She found a home with the rats, so it was only fitting that she'd be the one to use her rats in order to save the day at the end of the film. Although Ratcatcher 2 might be the most emotionally available in my opinion, King Shark is easily the most innocent on the team. He has the powers of a god, but acts as the sort of comedic relief in the group when it comes to his dialogue, much like Groot. But behind that, Gunn was able to write a beautiful character that's just seeking friendship, love, and an escape from loneliness. We see this front and center on display during the New Dumb Friends scene. Nanawe was immediately attracted to the Clyrax until they eventually got got out of the aquarium and attacked him. This is where Ratcatcher 2 and King Shark pair perfectly as teammates. Ratcatcher 2 knows what it feels like to be alone, to be without someone to love. Nanawe is looking for someone to love him. She connects with him and makes it clear to Nanawe that they're friends even after he tried to eat her. She doesn't decide to hold a grudge against him, she feels for him. Flag is an interesting character in this film. He's moved on from being the straight and narrow character he was in the original film. He seems more like an actual person. He's even willing to abandon the current mission in order to save Harley. This actually makes his death even more impactful. We actually got to see Flag as a person, not a soldier. He was sick of Waller's games, and the moment he decided to act on it is when he dies. And we can even see throughout the film that Flag begins to develop a friendship with Bloodsport. And now, I know I said Bloodsport was the least heartfelt character, but fuck it, I can be wrong. I'm human. After writing the Rick Flag section of this video, I realized something. Without Flag, Bloodsport's arc wouldn't have been as impactful. Flag died doing the right thing, trying to get the word about Starro out to the public, and he died trying to do it. This showed Bloodsport that doing the right thing, while it may hurt you, is always the right thing to do. This causes him to turn around, risking his own life to eventually save the entire country. Not only this, but he learns to overcome the fear, the imperfection of being scared of rats, and pets Sebastian, the bestest boy. Polka Dot Man, on the other hand, has somewhat of a normal arc, I would say. He's an overly anxious, lonely, depressed man lacking confidence and has a huge hatred of his mother, but he loosens up at the end of the film after having found his comfort in his teammates. This is driven deep with his last line where he yells that he's a superhero before he gets squished. He's finally happy with the thought he was actually able to help someone with his life, and then he dies. I think this is actually quite beautiful. Now, Harley Quinn is the most fleshed out of the characters by the time we see her in this film. This is basically the end of her trilogy, and I think it works really well. We saw her as the needy and clingy Harley Quinn in the first Suicide Squad, which we're comfortable with from the comics. She broke loose of the Joker's chains in Birds of Prey, a movie that I love the look of, but I haven't actually watched entirely. And now she's her own person. We even see this with the change of her tattoos in the Suicide Squad. She was able to find herself among the many other people she's been forced to work with in these movies. She found friends in every single one of her appearances, including this one. She found love in this movie, not only with the squad, but in Luna. But she knew that that relationship just wouldn't be what she deserved. She learned from her mistakes in previous movies and moved on. Gunn was able to bring these nomadic characters together and make them work, similarly to how he was able to make the Guardians work. But I think making this entire video and not talking about the drama behind the movie is impossible. In 2019, Gunn was fired from Marvel and Guardians 3 after offensive tweets that he had already apologized for began to surface. James Gunn seems like a genuinely nice individual, so as you can probably tell, it was heartbreaking to both fans and his friends when he was fired. James seems to have decided to work out these problems that had come up in his career through this movie. He felt lost and lonely, and that is exemplified in his characters. I think him choosing the Suicide Squad out of any other DC characters wears this on its sleeve. Gunn had the ability to choose whoever he wanted and chose the fucking Suicide Squad. Why? Because the Suicide Squad are imperfect. Yes, all characters are imperfect, although a lot of people like to believe Superman is perfect. He's not. But the Suicide Squad in a way reflects Gunn as a person during that time. These people, the characters in the movie, made mistakes. They made a lot of mistakes throughout their lives, and eventually these mistakes came back to haunt them, but they didn't let their mistakes stop them from doing the right thing. These people, these characters are scarred, many of them from abusive homes, just like Gunn. Gunn had every right to make this movie dark like its predecessor, but decided to make a bright, colorful, and quite frankly beautiful film that is still gritty at times. Henry Bram, the DP on the Suicide Squad, paired perfectly with Gunn. They've worked together on 2 Guardians movies and will be continuing their streak with Superman Legacy. The cinematography of the movie is also very indicative of the team. The movie is constantly moving. There's barely any shots in the film where the camera isn't moving in some way, shape, or form. Much like the hard to tie down characters of the film. At points, even the gore and the action are beautiful. Oh god, the action in this movie is incredible. From the Harley Quinn hallway fight to literally any scene that includes Peacemaker or Bloodsport, this movie is jam-packed with some of the best action in any DCEU movie. He used the action in ways that pushed the story forward. Never did I feel like an action scene was unnecessary, and never did I feel like there was too much slow motion in this movie. And I think for both Gunn and DC fans, that's exactly what this movie is. Necessary. I think overall the movie is perfect. I love every single one of these characters and everything Gunn did with them. I'm so glad that Gunn was able to make this movie and is now running the company and at the helm of none other than Superman. If anyone should be running DC, it's James fucking Gunn.